Hello, everyone. My name is Eddie Bolen. I'm a pastor at Edgewater United Methodist Church. I'm also a pastor at Midway United Methodist Church. I want to thank you so much for taking some time and for watching this video. I want you to take a minute and I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever been involved in really considering, what's my personal mission? What's the reason that I exist in this world? What am I here for? Or if you've never really done that in a personal way, sort of worked out, why am I here? What am I doing? And one of the things I want to make very clear, I'm not talking about, the kind of job that you've had, the family that you've had, maybe the kind of experience that you've had in relationships, although those are extraordinarily valuable. But I want you to, consider for yourself, have you really taken that moment and taken that time and said, you know what? This is why I'm here. This is why I am here in this world, and this is what I'm doing in this world. And like I said, maybe you've not done that before. Maybe you've not done that in a personal way, but maybe you've been with an organization. Maybe you've been with a business where you have worked, on a company's kind of mission statement, a company's vision statement. Maybe you've been in a place with another nonprofit group where you've sort of worked on a vision statement and a personal statement. And you may find, and I've had this experience too, but you may find that, taking that time to work on kind of a personal statement, a personal mission statement, this kind of vision statement, you may find that you go through a lot of work and then it just ends up getting put on a shelf. And so that's why I want, to sort of invite you to ask yourself, have you ever done that for yourself? And the reason being is that if we find ourselves in a place where we do kind of know why we're here on this earth and know even more so what it is that we would like to experience on this earth, it makes an extraordinarily big difference in our lives. And it also makes a very big difference in the way that we connect with God and the way that God connects with us. Now, you may wonder, well, what is the reason that Jesus came to this earth? What is the reason that Jesus lives and exists on this earth? There's a wonderful verse, and you've probably heard it before. It's John chapter 10, verse 10. Jesus says, I have come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Now, what's really interesting about that is if you go through the gospel, and in fact, followed by that, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but followed by that, I've come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. And then Jesus will say very famous words in the Gospel of John. There's these wonderful examples where Jesus says, this is who I am. This is what you can say about me. Is not other people that have written about this. It's not other people that have reported this, but Jesus will explicitly say, this is who I am. And then from that, I've come, John chapter 10, I've come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And he says, the sheep know and they hear my voice, and they come to me, and they follow me. And so very clearly, Jesus says not only the statement of who he is, but this is one of the ways that Jesus says, this is a way that you can think about me, is that I've come into this world, and I've come into this world as a shepherd. The entire chapter, in fact, in John chapter 10, revolves around sheep. These are things that Jesus encountered on a daily basis. These are things that Jesus, these were not just illustrations that Jesus was creating. This was not something that was tested on audiences. This was not something that was tested before Jesus said it. But these are just everyday examples of what Jesus said. And as Jesus encountered sheep and as Jesus encountered shepherds, he would also say this. He will say, when you have all of these sheep and they're gathered around, he says you have to be concerned about people stealing those sheep. You have to be concerned about thieves. And also you probably likely heard these words. But also in John chapter 10:10, Jesus says the thief, again referring to sheep, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And then Jesus will respond, I have come so that you may have life and so that you may have it more abundantly. And it is what Jesus tells us in his own words. This is the reason that I have come. This is the reason that I am here, so that you, the person who is watching this video, so that you, me, so that every single person in this world, that we may find in Jesus life, and that we may find an abundant life, as opposed to what is so often promised to us and what is so often asked of us are those ways of thievery that steal, kill, and rob and destroy those aspects of our lives that make us who we truly are. Well, that's one of those things I want you to think about. If Jesus has come to offer me, and if Jesus has come to offer you abundant life, what does that abundant life look like for you? And as you begin to consider that, I want to invite you into another story that is also in the Gospel of John. It comes before John 10:10, but it happens all the way back in John chapter 5. So not too far along. There's this gathering of people that have come, religious folks that are coming into the city of Jerusalem. And Jesus, once again, passing ordinary. This is John chapter 5, starting at verse 1. But Jesus is passing a gate that is intended to have sheep come in and out of the gate. And so what that gate is there for now is called Bethsaida. And there is a sheep gate that is there, and sheep are going by, and there is a pool that is next to that sheep gate. There is a pool that is there, and there are people that are sick. There are people that are unable to walk. There are people that are paralyzed that are around that sheep, and Jesus begins to encounter these people that are there. Jesus begins to encounter all these people, many invalids, as John chapter 5, verse 3 will say, in those lay many invalids. They were blind, they were lame, and they were paralyzed. And one man was there who had been ill for 38 years. And when Jesus began to see him lying there and knew that he had been there for a very long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" And that's what I wanted you to really begin to consider in your own life. That if Jesus were to ask you, and if Jesus were to encounter you exactly where you are in this very moment and ask you, do you want to be made well? Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be made complete? All translations of that particular word that really in healing and wellness and wholeness all combines together. But again, if Jesus were to ask you, I have come that you may have life and that you may have it abundantly, what needs to change in your life right now for you to be able to experience the abundance of what Jesus is offering to you? That's the question that Jesus is really asking this man. That is the question that Jesus really wants to drive home into this man's life. He knows that he had been there a long time, and we know, as John reminds us, that for at least 38 years that this man has been paralyzed. And Jesus asked him, do you want to be made well? He doesn't ask him, do you want to stand up? Do you want to walk? He doesn't ask him, do you want some kind of relief? Do you want some kind of comfort? He doesn't ask him, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? But he asks him, he says, do you want to be made well? And to which the man responds. He says, Lord, you know this pool that is here, you know the kind of healing powers that are around this pool, and it was considered. It was considered that around this pool, this is why he is here. This is why there are other people, as John reminds us, who were there, who were invalids, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, who were around this pool, because it was considered. It was considered that there were moments when an angel of the Lord, it was considered there were moments when there would be a spirit that would begin to move in the water. And something extraordinary would happen around that pool. Something extraordinary would happen around that water is that when the Spirit moved, when the angel touched that water, then the very first person that was there, the very first person to be able to come into that water, to be able to touch that water, then that person would be made whole. They would be made complete. They would be healed of whatever had brought them to that pool in the very first place. And this man says to Jesus, when Jesus asked this man who was here, who was paralyzed and invalid and had been there a very long time, this man says to Jesus, he says, you don't understand. You don't understand, sir. You don't understand. I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred. And while I'm walking my way, someone else steps ahead of me. He says, you don't understand it. I've got no one that's going to help me. I've got no one that's going to put me into this pool. And when I think that I'm getting close enough, when I think that I'm just on the edge of receiving the healing that this pool can offer, someone else steps in front of me. Here Jesus says, stand up. Now, how cold, how uncompassionate, what does it mean to say to someone who has been hurting for so long to stand up in this moment? Well, again, if you begin to think about the reason that Jesus is on this earth, if you begin to think about the reason that Jesus was at that pool, at that sheep gate, with all those who were paralyzed, lame, blind, and with this man who for at least 38 years had been there at the side of this pool, unable to experience the kind of healing that he did want in his life, you will begin to understand why Jesus says to him, stand up. You see, that's the reason that Jesus encountered this man at this pool. As he encountered this man at this pool, not to have a conversation about the healing properties of this pool, not to have a conversation about how rude people can be for someone who has struggled for so long in their life when someone else comes and steps in front of them. Jesus says, I want you to stand up. I want you to take up your mat and walk. Now, one of the interesting things about it, particularly in the Gospel of John, you will find oftentimes that when Jesus invites someone to stand, when Jesus invites someone to pick up their mat, to take their mat, to carry their mat, you'll find that they are oftentimes very poor. You'll find that oftentimes that they are, that there is some kind of physical disability that they're experiencing from, and that there are problems that they have. This is oftentimes you will find that the mat is associated with very poor, very destitute people who are on the edge of living. And so Jesus invites him to stand, to take up his mat, and to walk. And in that moment, what John chapter 5 says to us, it says, at that time this man was made well, and he took up his mat, and he began to walk. It's an extraordinarily simple story, but it is also an encouraging story for every single one of us. Is that although this man begins to engage Jesus in a theoretical conversation about the pool and about how he has been unable to change his life on his own by getting to that pool and time out, he has been at times been dissuaded from coming into this pool by other people who were, well, maybe out of their eagerness to jump into the pool or else by their own just rudeness have stepped in front of him when he was about to step into the pool. Jesus is not interested in a theoretical conversation about what has happened in our past or what is currently happening in our lives. Jesus has come so that every single one of us can have life, and so that we can have it abundantly. And so again, I invite you to consider that question in your mind. It says, why are you here on this earth? What is it that you are looking, what is the life that you want to experience on this earth? And as you begin to understand that, and as you begin to say, this is what I want to have in this life, you can begin to see how your connections with work, how your connections with your family, how your connections with your church and with your family, that they'll all change once you have clarity about that question. But the reason that I ask you to consider this question in such an urgent way, in such an urgent matter, is to imagine that if Jesus were standing in front of you, imagine if Jesus has come to you, the one who has described a life where he says that the thief comes into this world only to steal, kill, and destroy, yet I have come as a good shepherd. I am not trying to rob you of anything, but I have come that you, particularly you, in this moment that you find yourself in, I have come to you so that you may have life and that you may have it abundantly. more abundance. Eugene Peterson would translate this verse of John chapter, in the Message translation of the Bible, John chapter 10, verse 10. It says, the more and better life than you have ever dreamed of. And the reason that I ask you and encourage you to come to a place where you are prepared, to come to a place where you are prepared to encounter Jesus, is that Jesus is not interested in a theoretical conversation about maybe the experiences that you've had, whether good or bad, or even the times that you have failed to reach the kind of life that you hoped that you would have. Jesus is right here and in this moment interested only in the abundant life that Jesus is wanting to offer you. Jesus is only interested in you taking that step. You taking that step into that abundant life that Jesus has come to offer you. And so in your own personal mission statement, Jesus says, I've come that you may have life and that you may have it abundantly. And so from that, if Jesus comes to you and says, what do you want me to do in your life? In what ways do you want to be made well? In what ways do you want to be made whole? In what ways is it important for you to be made complete? And as soon as you ask Jesus to be made whole and well and complete, that's the moment that Jesus says, I want you to stand up, take your mat, and I want you to walk. It's going to involve some change. It's going to involve a brand new life, as it did for this man in John chapter 5. He is no longer going to be at that pool day in and day out. He is no longer going to be lying on that mat. He is now going to be walking. He is now going to be living in a new life. So again, Jesus is not interested in a theoretical conversation about you and about your life. Jesus has come to you to offer you life and to offer you abundant life. What is it that you want Jesus to do for you in this moment? What is it that Jesus is saying to you in this very moment? Where is that moment when you are standing, where you are taking your mat, and where you are walking? That's what I want you to begin to have a conversation with Jesus about. Because this is the reason that Jesus has come as a good shepherd into this man's life, and also the reason that Jesus has come as a good shepherd into your life as well. Please take some time and prayerfully, and maybe even some time where you spend in silence before God, but take some time to discover the life that Jesus is truly offering you. And know that Jesus is not interested in just a theoretical conversation, but what Jesus wants from you is to know, are you ready? Do you want to be made well? Do you want to be made whole? Do you want to be made complete in this moment? Well, I hope that this is really helpful for you, and I do pray that you will spend some time in silence before God, that you will spend some time in prayer before God as you consider the life that you want to live in the life that is offered to you in Jesus. Those scripture verses, really easy. John chapter 5, John chapter 10, everything that I've done has come out of both of those chapters of scripture. But thanks so much for watching. May God's blessings be upon all of you, both now and forevermore. Amen.